on a quiet world far from the busy trade routes. It is a calm place where the days pass slowly, and life follows a peaceful rhythm. Most of the people there are simple farmers and workers. They are not rich, not powerful, and not important to the larger galaxy. But they are kind, hardworking, and content with what they have. On this world lived a small alien family, a pair of adults and a young child who kept mostly to themselves. They had a modest home made of local stone, surrounded by soft blue grass that moved like water when the wind passed over it. Their life was simple, caring for their crops, gathering supplies, and teaching their child about honesty and respect. One late afternoon, as the sun dipped low and covered the land in a golden glow, the older of the two adults walked toward a nearby ridge to check a water pump. It was a routine job, something done almost every evening. But as they approached the rocky slope, they heard a strange clicking sound metal hitting stone, followed by a low, pained groan. It was not a sound that belonged to any animal on their planet. It was too sharp, too mechanical, too foreign. The adult froze for a moment, unsure. Their world was peaceful, but travelers sometimes passed through. Most kept their distance. Some simply studied the land. But this sound, it felt wrong. Cautiously, they climbed the ridge and looked down into a shallow ditch. What they saw made their heart race. A human lay there, half covered in dust and pieces of broken equipment. His suit was torn in several places, and sparks flickered weakly from a damaged device near his chest. His breathing was uneven. His face showed pain, exhaustion, and fear. It was clear he had suffered some kind of accident, maybe a fall, maybe equipment failure, maybe both. He reached out slightly when he noticed someone standing above him, as if asking for help, but too weak to speak. The alien adult hesitated. Humans were known across the galaxy as powerful, fast learners, strong fighters when necessary. Yet they were also known for being fiercely loyal and surprisingly gentle with those who treated them well. Still, finding an injured human in the middle of nowhere was not something that happened often. It brought risk from whatever harmed the human, risk from human authorities, risk from gossip in the village. But the adult also remembered the values they had taught their child. Help others whenever you can. Do what is right even when no one is watching. And now someone was watching, this stranger who could barely move, who looked like he had been alone for days. Slowly, the adult approached. The human's eyes widened a little, as if unsure whether the figure coming toward him meant danger or safety. The alien knelt beside him, scanning for serious injuries. The human tried to speak, but only a raspy whisper came out. It was enough to know he desperately needed help. The adult called for their partner, using a small communicator. Within minutes, the partner arrived, followed by their child, who stayed safely behind. All three stared at the injured human, and for a moment, none of them spoke. Finally, the partner said softly, "We cannot leave him here. He will not survive the night." They lifted him carefully, supporting his weight as he winced softly from the pain. His equipment had clearly exploded or malfunctioned. Parts of it were fused together, and a faint burnt smell followed them as they carried him toward their home. The child walked beside them, wide-eyed and curious. They had seen humans before, but never this close, and never one who looked so fragile. Back at the home, they placed him on a simple sleeping mat and removed damaged pieces of his suit. They gave him water first, then a mild herbal drink known on their world for helping with pain. The human's breathing steadied. His expression relaxed. For a moment, it seemed like he might fall asleep, but he forced his tired eyes open and murmured in a soft, grateful voice, "Thank you." It was only 2 words, but the family understood his tone. They smiled gently, encouraging him to rest. They had saved travelers before injured animals, lost explorers from nearby settlements, But this felt different. This was a human, someone whose people were part of major alliances and important councils. Humans were known across many systems. Helping one didn't feel like helping an ordinary traveler. Still, the family tried not to think about that. To them, he was simply someone in need. As night settled over their home, the human drifted in and out of sleep. Every time he woke, he found the family nearby. They offered warm food, treated the burns on his arm, and repaired what little of his equipment could be saved. The child stayed close, handing cloths or bringing water with careful, nervous excitement. Sometimes the human gave a weak smile, which the child took as a sign of friendship. The next morning, the human tried to sit up but failed. His body needed time. He spoke quietly about what had happened. He had been exploring the terrain, testing equipment meant for harsh environments. Something went wrong. A battery module overheated, then exploded. He fell down the slope and damaged his communication unit. He had hoped someone would find him, but he had not expected it to be this family. For several days, he stayed with them. They made a small corner of the house into a temporary recovery space. The partner cooked simple meals, careful not to serve anything that might harm a human stomach. The adult checked his wounds, replaced bandages, and made sure he was never left alone. The child, always eager to learn, asked him 1,000 questions about Earth, about human cities, about ships and stars. The human answered with patience and warmth, telling stories of tall buildings, oceans that stretched beyond the horizon, and skies filled with traveling ships. He quickly noticed how humble their life was. Their home had no fancy machines, no advanced comforts. But everything was clean, organized, and filled with gentle care. They didn't ask for anything in return. They didn't search his belongings. They didn't treat him like a threat. They treated him like a guest. One evening, when he felt strong enough to stand, he stepped outside to breathe fresh air. The sky was painted in soft shades of orange and violet. The child stood beside him, watching the horizon. After a few quiet moments, the human spoke softly. "I owe you more than I can ever repay." The adult heard him and walked over with a reassuring smile. "You owe us nothing. We only did what anyone should do." The human shook his head slowly. "Not everyone would have helped me. You could have stayed away. You could have waited for someone else to find me." He paused, then sighed. "But you chose to help me. I won't forget that." The adult looked at him kindly, touched by his sincerity, but unaware of the weight of his words. A few more days passed, and the human regained his strength. His suit was repaired enough for travel, and his communication unit was working again. He prepared to leave, standing beside his small ship, which he accessed after a quick walk guided by the family. He looked at them, the two adults and the child, and felt a deep sense of gratitude he struggled to express with words. Before boarding, he turned back and spoke with quiet determination. "If you ever need anything, if trouble ever finds you, send the message. Humans repay kindness. All of us." The family exchanged confused glances. They didn't fully understand the meaning behind his promise, but they appreciated the sentiment. In their minds, what they had done was simple kindness. In the human's mind, it was far more. He stepped inside his ship, powered it up, and slowly lifted off. The child waved until the ship disappeared into the sky, leaving only a faint trail behind. Life returned to normal soon after. The family didn't expect to hear from him again. They assumed his promise was just a polite gesture. But the human recorded every detail of their kindness in his official logs and filed it with his people. To him, it was an unforgettable moment. And though the family didn't know it yet, their simple act of compassion would shape their future in ways they could never imagine. For now, though, they returned to their peaceful days, never guessing that the man they helped would one day move entire fleets for their sake. picks up several years after the human visitor left the quiet frontier world. The alien family had settled back into their gentle routine. Life felt simple again. They woke with the soft light of the twin suns, tended their crops, repaired small tools, and shared warm meals in the evenings. Their child had grown taller, more curious, and more aware of how big the galaxy truly was. Sometimes the child asked about the human where he was now, what worlds he might be exploring, whether he still remembered them. The parents always answered with a smile, saying that he was probably safe, busy, and living his own life somewhere far away. They never imagined their paths would cross again. But the galaxy beyond their peaceful valley had changed. Rumors began drifting into their small village long before trouble reached their own doorstep. Travelers spoke of a new faction spreading across nearby systems, a group known for grabbing resources and taking control of weaker colonies. This group didn't arrive with diplomacy or friendly agreements. They arrived with strict demands, heavy rules, and an attitude that frightened many peaceful communities. People in the village tried to ignore these rumors at first. After all, their world had no rare minerals, no strategic location, and no major cities. They thought trouble would simply pass them by. As months passed, the rumors grew stronger. More travelers warned that the faction was getting closer. Whole settlements in the neighboring region were being forced to pay heavy taxes. Small planets were pressured to join the faction, which really meant giving up their freedom. News reached the village of families on other worlds, suddenly losing their homes or being forced into work they didn't want to do. Still, everyone hoped the threat would fade before reaching them. But hope wasn't enough. One pale morning, as a cool breeze drifted over the fields, the sky above the village shimmered. At first, the family thought it was ordinary atmospheric light. But then they saw shadows long, wide shadows cast by engines descending from the clouds. The villagers gathered outside, staring upward with growing fear. Several large ships dropped lower, too quiet, moving too slowly. Ships from the faction everyone had been whispering about. The parents stood with their child, watching the ships settle in the distance. They tried to stay calm, but they knew this was not a friendly visit. When the ships landed, teams of officials stepped out. They wore cold expressions and moved with strict purpose, as if they had done this many times before. They carried tablets, scanners, and long lists of rules that no one in the village understood. Within hours, these officials began meeting with village leaders. They announced that this world now belonged to their administration. They claimed they would bring order, protection, and development, but their tone was firm, leaving no room for disagreement. The villagers were told they now had new work quotas. They now had to provide food, materials, and labor to support the faction's growing control. Anyone who resisted was labeled uncooperative. No one knew exactly what happened to those who were marked that way, but no one wanted to find out. Weeks passed, and the once peaceful world began to feel different. The officials didn't hurt anyone, but they controlled everything who could travel, what could be traded, what crops needed to be grown, which goods had to be handed over. The village marketplace, once filled with laughter and small bargains, now felt heavy and quiet. People walked with lowered eyes. The adults felt stressed. The children could sense the tension, even if they didn't understand it fully. The alien family tried to adjust, keeping their heads down and focusing on their work. But they soon realized that staying invisible was impossible in times like these. One afternoon, when the parents were returning from the field, they saw two officials standing near their home. They were scanning the area around it, inspecting old equipment and speaking in whispers. The parents approached cautiously and asked if everything was all right. The officials didn't answer directly. They simply asked questions, too many questions about past visitors, past events, past strangers who had ever stepped onto their land. The parents answered as honestly as they could. They spoke only of simple travelers passing through, people who needed directions or a quick repair. They didn't mention the human from years ago. They didn't want to draw attention to someone who had already gone so far away. But the officials seemed unsatisfied. They returned several times over the next weeks, always asking about old visitors. They requested access to old communication logs, scanned the soil for unusual energy traces, and inspected the family's shed without asking permission. Their behavior worried the family deeply. They wondered why the officials were so interested in their home of all places. One evening, the child came running inside, frightened. They said they overheard two officials talking near the water well. The officials mentioned hearing rumors from a distant outpost, rumors that a human explorer had once been rescued in this region many years ago. They were trying to find out where. They believed anyone who helped a human might have access to knowledge or tools worth taking. According to them, people who hide humans could be hiding information that the faction wanted. The parents felt a chill run through them. The human they helped so long ago had not been a secret at the time. But now, in this new political climate, even a small act of kindness could be twisted into something suspicious. The officials kept returning, sometimes pretending it was a routine check, other times openly questioning them about the past. The villagers noticed too. Some neighbors became distant. Some whispered that the family should never have helped an outsider. Others warned them to be careful. In times of fear, people often turned away from anyone who drew attention. The family realized they couldn't escape the curiosity of the officials. Every day brought new tension. Their peaceful world was slowly being reshaped into something colder, harsher, and unstable. And although no harm came to them physically, the pressure was constant, like a weight pressing down on their home. One night, after the child had gone to bed, the two parents sat near the small fire in the center of their home. The flames flickered softly. Outside, the distant hum of the faction's ships echoed like a reminder that they were no longer free. They talked quietly about the human, the stranger, who had once been helpless in their care. They remembered his promise, spoken with sincerity, but never expected to be used. If you ever need anything, send a message. At the time, they thought it was simply a polite farewell. But now, with officials questioning them and their community slipping under the faction's control, that promise felt different. It felt like a small seed of hope buried deep in their past. The parents wondered if they should try to reach him. But years had passed. He could be anywhere. He might not even be alive. And sending a message could draw even more attention from the officials. It was a difficult choice. Asking for help from a powerful human was dangerous. Doing nothing was dangerous too. They stayed awake late into the night, discussing every possibility. Their world had once been quiet, simple, and full of kindness. Now it felt uncertain and fragile. The family sensed that something heavier was coming. They didn't know when or how, but they felt it in the way the officials walked, the way the sky seemed quieter, the way the village held its breath every time a new ship landed. What they didn't know was that the story of their kindness had already traveled far. The human they once saved had not forgotten. Their small act of compassion had been recorded, shared, and remembered by people who took such promises very seriously. But for now, the family didn't know any of that. They only knew one thing. Trouble was getting closer, and they had no idea how to escape it. The simple life they once lived was slipping away, and the shadow of the faction spread deeper into their world every day, leaving the family wondering whether reaching out to a distant, human someone they helped long ago was their only chance left. They didn't yet understand that one small message could shake the entire region of space. But soon they would. Quiet night when the family could no longer ignore the growing tension around them. The village felt different now. The once friendly atmosphere had changed into something tight and uneasy. People spoke in low voices, always checking over their shoulders before they said anything. Even children played less. They sensed something was wrong, even if they didn't know the details. The family sat together in their small home, sharing a meal in silence. The bright glow from the nearby ships washed across the fields, reminding them that they were being watched every day. Officials had visited several houses recently, collecting information and questioning families for long hours. Everyone tried to cooperate, but the fear remained heavy in their hearts. The child looked at the parents with worried eyes and finally spoke. "Why are they so interested in us? We never did anything wrong." The parents exchanged a tired look. They wished they had a clear answer. They wished they could say everything would be fine. But deep inside, they knew things were getting worse. One of the parents placed a gentle hand on the child's shoulder and said softly, "Sometimes trouble comes even when we try to stay peaceful. This is not our fault." The child nodded, but the confusion didn't fade. Later that night, when the child had gone to sleep, the parents sat near the small lantern that flickered gently on the table. They whispered about what they should do. They remembered the human's promise, the one he had given years ago. At the time, his words felt warm, but unrealistic, like something said out of gratitude. But now, as the world around them grew darker, his promise felt like a lifeline. Still, they were unsure. "Do you think he truly meant it?" one parent asked quietly. "He sounded sincere," the other replied, staring into the small flame. "Humans are known for keeping their promises. But it has been many years. He may not even receive our message. And if the officials discover we contacted someone outside their control," the first parent added with a worried sigh. They didn't finish the sentence. They didn't need to. Both understood the risk. But the risk of doing nothing felt heavier. After hours of thinking, the parents decided they had to try. Not for themselves, but for their child. They couldn't allow the situation to worsen without at least attempting to reach out for help. They remembered the small device the human had given them before he left. It wasn't large or impressive, just a simple emergency beacon with a single button hidden under a protective latch. He had said would send a message to a relay station if they ever needed it. They never thought they would use it. The device was kept inside a small box beneath their bed. When they took it out, they felt a strange mix of fear and hope. It looked old now, covered in a thin layer of dust. But when one of the parents lifted the latch, a faint blue light blinked to life. The beacon still worked. They hesitated for a long moment. Then, with a deep breath, one of them pressed the button. The device hummed softly for a few seconds. The light shifted from blue to white, then pulsed 3 times. That was it. The message had been sent. A short signal, no long explanation. Just a simple call for help from coordinates registered long ago. The family stared at the beacon, half expecting something immediate to happen. But nothing changed. The night remained quiet. The ships outside still hovered with their cold lights. The officials continued their strict patrols. The only difference was the silent hope settling inside their hearts. They packed the device away again, making sure no one would find it. Then they went to bed with a nervous calm, unsure if the message had traveled far enough, or if anyone would even care. The next few days passed with slow tension. The family continued their usual tasks, but their minds were elsewhere. Every time a ship flew overhead, their hearts raced. Every time officials came to the village, they feared someone had discovered the beacon's signal. But nothing happened at first. At the same time, things in the village grew worse. The officials tightened their rules even more. They demanded more resources. They asked more questions. They searched more homes. People whispered that someone must have done something wrong for the faction to behave so suspiciously. A few neighbors even looked at the family with uncertain eyes, as if wondering why officials visited their home so often. The family didn't blame them. Fear can make people see danger even where there is none. One evening, when the family was walking home from the fields, they noticed a group of officials scanning the sky with handheld devices. The officials seemed tense, frustrated, and confused. They were talking among themselves, pointing at some coordinates over the horizon. The family didn't know exactly what was happening, but they sensed something had changed. The next night brought the first real sign. It began with a faint vibration under the ground, so light that the child thought it was a small quake. But the parents felt it was something else. They instinctively went outside. Several neighbors were already standing in their yards, looking at the sky with puzzled expressions. The vibration grew stronger, not enough to harm anything, but enough to feel like the soil itself was reacting to something approaching. The sky, normally clear with soft stars, flickered slightly. The officials stepped outside their temporary command center with concern on their faces. They were scanning the sky with hurried movements, talking to each other through communication devices. The villagers watched with growing unease. Then it happened. A small point of light appeared far above, brighter than a star. It didn't move like a comet or a natural object. It descended slowly, controlled and deliberate, getting larger by the second. The officials began shouting orders. Some ran for equipment. Others tried to block villagers from approaching. The parents exchanged a silent look. Their hearts beat faster. Was this connected to the message? The point of light grew until it formed the shape of a ship. A sleek vessel, unfamiliar, not from the faction controlling the planet. It hovered silently above the clouds, impossibly stable, as if observing the world below. Then another ship appeared behind it, and another. Within minutes, the entire sky above the village filled with quiet, steady lights. They didn't glow with threat. They glowed with purpose. The officials panicked. They tried to contact their command, but their devices crackled with interruption. Someone was overriding their signals. The villagers were frozen, breathless, caught between fear and awe. The family felt something different, a rising warmth of hope they hadn't felt in years. A sudden message echoed across the sky, calm and firm, like a voice that carried strength without anger. This world has issued a distress call, registered with the Terran Union. Stand down. Do not interfere with civilians. Terran aid has arrived. The village fell silent. The officials looked stunned, unable to understand how humans had found this planet so quickly. The villagers exchanged confused whispers. But the family understood. Their message had been heard. The promise made years ago, spoken softly by an injured human they once helped, had traveled across the stars and reached people who took loyalty seriously. The fleet in the sky wasn't here for conquest. They were here because someone remembered them. The parents held their child close, overwhelmed with emotion. They had been scared for so long, carrying their worries quietly. Now, for the first time in years, they felt something return, something they thought had faded forever. Safety, security, hope, but they also knew this was only the beginning. The officials wouldn't simply walk away. The larger faction wouldn't ignore the arrival of Terran ships. Something bigger was coming, something that would shake the region far more deeply than any villager could imagine. Yet one truth was already clear. Their act of kindness from years ago had echoed farther than they ever dreamed. And now the humans had come to answer it. On the morning after the strange lights filled the sky, the village woke slowly, almost cautiously, unsure if the previous night had been real or just a shared dream. People stepped outside their homes with wide eyes, whispering to each other about the huge ships they had seen hovering above the clouds. No one had ever seen anything like them. They weren't from the faction that controlled the planet. They weren't trade ships. They weren't research vessels. They were something entirely different, calm, powerful, and steady. as if they had arrived with full confidence in their purpose. But the family didn't need long to understand who the ships belonged to. Deep inside, they felt it. They felt it the moment they heard the message in the sky. They felt it the moment the officials lost control of their own communication devices. And they felt it again this morning as they prepared for the day with nervous excitement. The humans had come. The promise made years ago had not been forgotten. The parents stood outside their home and watched as more villagers gathered around the main path leading to the fields. Most of them looked anxious. Some were hopeful. Others were confused, wondering why humans, a species they rarely encountered, would come all the way here. Meanwhile, the officials from the faction looked shaken. They no longer walked with the same strict posture. Their faces showed frustration and uncertainty. They kept trying to contact their command, but their signals were blocked by something powerful in orbit. Everyone waited for something to happen, and then it did. Small ship descended from one of the large vessels above. It glided silently, almost gracefully, lowering itself toward the open space near the village center. People took a cautious step back as dust rose in soft waves. The ship touched the ground with a gentle thud. A moment later, the door slid open with a soft hiss. 3 humans stepped out. They wore simple, clean uniforms, light in color, without any visible weapons. Their expressions were calm, not threatening, not strict, but composed and clear. They walked with confidence, yet their movements were gentle, as if they wanted to avoid scaring anyone. The villagers whispered among themselves, "Why are humans here? Did we do something? Are they friendly?" The officials moved quickly toward the humans, trying to speak first, trying to show authority. They introduced themselves and attempted to explain that this world was under their administration. They spoke loudly, as if hoping volume would hide their fear. But the humans didn't look intimidated. One of them held up a small device and said politely, "Please step back for a moment. We will address everyone together." The officials froze as if they had been quietly dismissed. They stepped back, their frustration clear, but their fear making them obey. The humans then turned to face the villagers. One of them spoke with a warm, steady tone that carried easily in the morning air. "We received a distress signal registered many years ago to this location. We came to make sure the people of this village are safe." The villagers murmured softly. Some looked at the family. One of the officials quickly stepped forward again, insisting that there was no distress signal and that the humans must have made a mistake. But the human leader simply shook his head and replied calmly, "The signal was real, and it came from this area." The parents felt their hearts tighten. The humans hadn't named them. They hadn't revealed any details. But the parents knew this moment pointed directly toward them. They exchanged a silent glance. Their child held onto their hand tightly. The human leader continued speaking to the villagers. He explained that they were not here to take over the world or to disrupt anyone's life. They simply wanted to verify who needed help and make sure that no one was being mistreated. The villagers relaxed slightly. Some even looked relieved. The officials, however, did not. Their faces hardened as they realized they could lose control over the community. The humans asked if they could speak privately to the village elders. The elders agreed, though they looked nervous. They walked toward a small meeting house with the human visitors. The officials tried to join the conversation, but the humans politely declined, saying the meeting was for local representatives only. This made the officials even more tense. While the meeting happened inside, the villagers stayed outside, quietly discussing what was happening. Many of them approached the family. "Do you know why humans are here?" One asked. "Your home was searched so many times. Did something happen? Did someone contact them?" The parents answered softly, telling them they weren't sure what the humans wanted. They tried to avoid revealing too much. Not because they wanted to hide anything, But because they knew fear could cause misunderstandings, the child stayed quiet, watching the sky where the large ships hovered. The child wondered if one of those ships carried the same human they helped long ago. A part of them hoped he was among the visitors. Another part worried that expecting too much might lead to disappointment. When the elders and humans finally stepped out of the meeting house, everyone gathered around, eager to hear what had been decided. The human leader spoke clearly so everyone could hear. We have reviewed the situation. Based on what we observed and what your leaders told us, we will be staying here for a short time to ensure that no one is being pressured unfairly. We are here to protect civilians. Nothing more. The villagers let out a soft sigh of relief. The officials, however, looked like they had swallowed something bitter. They tried to argue again, saying they had full legal authority over the planet. But the humans remained calm. We are not here to argue laws, the human leader said. We are here because a request for help was made. We take such requests seriously. The villagers looked around uncertainly, wondering who could have sent the message. No one knew except the family, who stood at the back, quiet and nervous. After the humans reassured the villagers, they began walking around the settlement with small scanning devices. They checked crop fields, storage buildings, water supplies, and work quotas. Everywhere they went, they asked simple but important questions. Are you comfortable with your current workload? Is anyone forcing you to give up your resources unfairly? Has your daily life changed in a way that makes you uncomfortable? The villagers answered honestly. The humans listened with patience and concern, not judgment. The officials followed behind, growing more stressed with every answer they heard. By midday, the humans had already learned enough to understand what was happening. They didn't accuse anyone. They didn't raise their voices. But their expressions grew more serious, more focused. They made their way to the family's home next. The family stood outside, waiting nervously. The human leader smiled gently as he approached, as if he recognized something about them without needing an explanation. You live here? He asked softly. Yes, the parent replied. The human leader looked at the small house, the simple tools, the neat rows of crops. Then he looked at the family's faces, tired, uncertain, but hopeful. He spoke gently. We received your signal. Thank you for trusting us. The parents froze. The child looked up in surprise. They hadn't expected the humans to acknowledge it so openly. The human leader lowered his voice and added, Years ago, one of ours filed a report about a family here who helped him during a difficult moment. He said you showed kindness without expecting anything. He asked that we watch over you if anything ever happened. One of the parents felt their eyes sting with sudden emotion. They didn't speak. They couldn't. The human leader continued. Your message reached the relay station. It was marked with his identification code. When we saw it, we came immediately. The child swallowed hard, their heart pounding. The promise had been real. The human they helped had truly remembered them. Meanwhile, the officials tried to interrupt, but the human leader turned toward them. Still calm. We will not interfere with your administration beyond our duty, but we will make sure this family and this entire village is safe. The officials stepped back, frustrated but powerless. As the sun set, the villagers came out of their homes and watched the sky again. The Terran ships remained above them, steady and watchful, like guardians who had no intention of leaving until the situation was safe. For the first time in a long while, the village felt light again. The family sat together outside their home, watching the stars appear. They didn't know what tomorrow would bring. They didn't know how long the humans would stay, or what the officials would do next. But they knew one thing with absolute certainty. They were no longer alone. Their act of kindness had traveled across years and light years, returning to them when they needed it most. And now the humans, quiet, steady, loyal, stood ready to keep their promise. Whatever happened next, The family felt a deep comfort rising in their hearts. Help had truly arrived. The sun was just rising when the people of the small alien town stepped outside and saw Terran ships floating calmly above their sky. For the first time in years, there was no fear in the air. No patrols. No threats. No one shouting orders at them. The strange silence felt unreal, as if the planet itself was trying to understand what had changed overnight. Everyone had grown so used to living under fear that peace felt confusing. The alien family, who had sent the message, stood quietly outside their home. They were tired, scared, and unsure what the future held. But they felt something they hadn't felt in a very long time: hope. A simple, soft hope that things could get better. They kept looking at the sky, waiting for someone to come down. They didn't know if the human fleet would even talk to them personally. Maybe the Terrans would simply chase away the invaders and leave. Maybe the message they had sent months ago was just a small detail in a big war. But deep inside, a part of them kept remembering the human they once rescued many years ago. His words echoed again and again. If you ever need anything, humans pay their debts. At that time, they had laughed softly. They had believed he was only being polite. They never expected those words to return so powerfully that entire star systems would feel their effect. Late in the morning, a light shimmered in the air. A Terran transport ship slowly descended toward the surface. It landed gently near the old community hall where people once met before fear took over their world. A ramp opened and several Terran officers walked out. Their steps were calm. Their posture relaxed. They were not here to scare anyone. The alien family watched from afar, holding each other's hands. Their hearts beat fast. Then a local guard approached them and said the Terran commander wanted to meet them specifically. They were shocked at why us. They wondered. We are not important. We are just simple people. But the guard insisted. He asked for you by description. He knows about the message you sent. So with nervous steps, the family walked toward the hall. People around them whispered, watching with curious eyes. No one could understand how this small family had gained the attention of the most powerful fleet they had ever seen. When they entered the hall, the Terran commander turned toward them. He was tall, wearing a simple dark uniform, and carried no weapon. His expression was gentle, not stern. Behind him, a few other Terran officers stood respectfully. He gave them a warm nod. You must be the ones who sent the signal. The family didn't know how to respond at first. Finally, the eldest among them spoke in a quiet voice. We didn't think anyone would hear it. The commander smiled gently. We heard. And we came because that signal was connected to a promise. The family looked confused. A promise? From whom? The commander stepped closer, lowering his voice, as if sharing something personal. Many years ago, one of our explorers traveled through this region. His ship malfunctioned. He was injured, and you saved him. The family froze. They remembered the human, of course. They had never forgotten his tired smile or the way he thanked them repeatedly. But they never thought he had been someone important. They never thought their small moment of kindness mattered. The commander continued speaking. That explorer became an important member of the Terran fleet. Before he passed away, he wrote about you. He described how your kindness saved his life, how you had no reason to help a stranger, yet you did it anyway. He said he owed you everything. The family's eyes softened with emotion. They had not known he was gone. They remembered him as a kind, injured traveler. Learning he had passed away filled them with sudden sadness. The commander paused for a moment out of respect, before speaking again. In his final notes, he asked that if you ever called for help, no matter where you were, no matter the time Terrans should answer. The youngest in the family slowly sat down, overwhelmed by the weight of the moment. They had lived so many years believing their kindness had disappeared into the wind. But here it was, returning stronger than ever. The commander continued, "That signal you sent reached our military records." His note matched it. "So we mobilized the fleet." The mother of the family whispered, almost in disbelief, "All this because we helped one human?" The commander nodded softly. "To us, helping one of us is helping all of us. We don't forget those who show goodwill." He paused, then added, "And we don't leave them alone when danger comes." A long silence filled the hall. The family didn't know what to say. They were grateful, shocked, confused, and relieved all at once. Their world had been suffering for so long. And now, because of something they did years ago, help had arrived at their doorstep like a miracle. Finally, the father of the family bowed his head, his voice trembling. "Thank you. We don't have much. We cannot repay this." The Terran commander shook his head quickly. "You already repaid it years ago. What you did may have felt small to you, but to him, it was life-changing. And because of that, everything we do today is simply honoring a promise." The family felt their hearts warm with emotion. Tears gathered in their eyes, but they wiped them away quickly. This moment was too big for tears, yet too emotional to stay calm. Outside the hall, the planet was changing already. Terran medics were giving supplies. Terran engineers were repairing broken systems around the town. Patrols from the invading faction were being escorted off-world without violence. People who had lived in fear were finally stepping outside with cautious hope. The alien family walked out with the commander. They watched their neighbors approach, Terran soldiers with questions and relief. They saw children pointing at the sky with excitement instead of fear. The usual heaviness in the air was gone. The commander noticed their expression and said softly, "Your world will be safe now. We will make sure of it. No one will harm you again." The family nodded, still overwhelmed. Later that evening, as the sun was setting, the commander returned to speak with them once more. This time his tone was more personal, less official. He shared something that touched them deeply. "The human you saved," he said gently, always told his students and his crew that kindness is the most powerful thing in the galaxy. He believed it could travel farther than any ship, last longer than any battle, and return when least expected. The family listened silently, each word sinking into their heart. The commander continued, "He used to say that if kindness is given freely, it will find its way back, maybe not immediately, but eventually. And when it returns stronger." He looked at them directly, with deep respect. "That's why we are here. Today, every Terran ship, every Terran soldier, and every Terran voice stands with you. Because years ago, you stood with one of us when no one else did." The family could not stop their tears this time. They cried openly, not out of sadness, but relief. For the first time, they felt seen. They felt remembered. They felt valued. People from the town gathered around, wanting to know what the Terran commander had said. And when the family told them the truth, the whole town fell silent. They began to realize that a single moment of kindness, something they had almost forgotten, had brought protection for their entire world. By nightfall, the stars above looked brighter than usual. Or maybe they only looked that way because the Terran ships glowed gently among them, like guardians keeping watch. In the quiet of their home, the family sat together, thinking about everything that had happened. They understood now that kindness does not disappear. It moves quietly, unseen, until one day it returns with unimaginable strength. The next morning, when the Terran fleet prepared to reposition around the planet, the commander visited them one last time before leaving for orbit. He placed a small device in their hands. "This will reach us any time," he said, "but I don't think you'll need it again. Still, keep it. It's a symbol of our bond. The family held the device close. They knew it was more than just technology. It was a reminder that their small act of helping a stranger had changed their destiny. As the Terran commander walked back to his ship, he paused, turned, and spoke words that would be remembered across generations. You saved one human. Today, every Terran gun speaks for you. And with that, the engines roared softly, lifting him back toward the sky, leaving behind a world no longer afraid. The family watched until the ship became only a tiny dot among the stars. They stood together, hearts full, knowing one truth very clearly. Kindness had saved them, and kindness would always return.